Bomb. And the only thing that
blocks of buildings. These are pictures I've taken myself anyway. And an 11th floor building fucked in by what we call an implosion bomb.
Hello, my name is Stanley Heller. Welcome to the Struggle Video News. On the program today, the April 5th protests. More of Dr. Swee Ang's talk about her work last fall in Lebanon and Israeli aggression in Syria. We start with breaking news. Promoting Enduring Peace has announced that it will give its Dorothy Day Award and $1,000 to abducted Palestinian Mahmoud Khalil, who was leader at Columbia protests against genocide. Details next week. Now to the protests on April 5th. We came late to the demonstration in Danbury, Connecticut, and it was rainy when we arrived. But earlier, the local paper reports there were 1,000 people present.
A sacred moment, because it calls each and every one of us to remember who we are, what we believe in, and what we need to defend the very fabric of our democracy. Not stand by while this administration disrespects that oath, disrespects the law, and disrespects the very people who have dedicated their lives to public service. Veterans and our federal workers, many of whom are the backbone of community, deserve honor and support, not contempt, instability, and cruelty. The ACLU has spent over 100 years in the courts, in the legislature, and in communities defending the rights of every person.
Always interested in whether the anti-MAGA protests would have signs about Palestine. There were a couple in Danbury. This one was very clever. The milk carton message, "Where is Mahmoud Khalil?" Here's one in New London, carried by the artist Mike Alowitz. A report about the huge New York City protests said there were many signs about Palestine and they were well respected. In the big cities, rallies were massive, supposedly totaling 1 million people. On the very same day, thousands took to the streets in Washington, D.C., in a demonstration for Palestine. Here is a video of a huge paper scroll holding the names of tens of thousands who were killed in Gaza.
Ismail April, when he was beheaded by an American bomb. And the only thing that stayed was this press vest and his body under.
And video of sandals representing Palestinian children. This is a full-page ad in an Israeli newspaper signed by hundreds of Israeli Air Force pilots in their reserve, denouncing the renewal of the war. I know, not nearly enough, but it's a step, and in that fascist country, it's rather a brave step. At the Palestine Museum, U.S., more of the talk by Dr. Swee Ang. She's a Malaysian doctor and human rights hero. She's been treating Palestinians and Lebanese for over 40 years. In the section we finished last week, she had been talking about how last September 2024, she treated civilians in a Lebanese hospital who had been maimed by Israel's pager bombs. She talks about a patient who lost 3 fingers in the attack. The picture she showed was terribly bloody. We cover it up because this show is broadcast on cable.
I finished with this patient really late and I was really tired. So I went to the recovery to explain to him when he wakes up and say, look, you have your little and ring finger left, you got thumb, so you are able to hold objects, what we call a power grip, or just a general grasp, but you will never have a normal hand, and but you will have some function. And also to explain to him that I'm not local in Lebanon, and I might have to go back to England, but you'll be looked after by good doctors. And it was very strange. He also lost one eye. And through the nurse, he asked me, Doctor, what do you think? How do you feel? And of course, at the time, I got to tell him, I'm very sad. I'm so sad for all my patients. You know, maybe you're not dead, but it's going to be a struggle for the rest of your life. And you know what my patient said to me? Doctor, please don't be sad. Because we all stand for justice, we all support Gaza. And if the price we pay is being wounded, it's the price that we will pay. And at that stage, I just couldn't face him anymore. I had to leave with it because it was so emotional. But I wanted to show you, so after 2 hours of struggle, we did manage to make the ring and little finger look like a ring and little finger, and we gave him a thumb. So he will have a functional hand, but not a normal hand, eventually. And this was how we recreated it, we wired everything. But little do I know that when I left Lebanon the next week, this patient, in fact, all the patients, all 4,000 of them, could not continue with the treatment because Lebanon was bombed. And you find South Lebanon was bombed first and everybody was fleeing. And so the patients that we treated are displaced, we don't know where they are. Some of them did come back eventually, and my colleagues were looking after them, are still looking after them, but we don't know where the rest. So these are figures. Patient attack, 4,000 named, and then the air bombardment starting a week later, and the land invasion, making 1.1 million Lebanese homeless and displaced, and injured 16,500 and killed 4,000. So, it is quite important because many people ask me, oh, is this such a horrible situation, the recent event? I put this map up to remind ourselves that it's not a recent event. It's something which has gone on for so long. And I think if there's nothing else that makes people understand the history of Palestine are these simple maps. You know, what was Palestine? What was it like before 1948? It's a map on the extreme left. It was a country full of people, Arab, Muslims, Christians, and Jews, living in a very civilized country with culture, with everything, with newspapers, with schools, with universities. And then Palestine became partitioned in 1947. And of course, the country I live in has a big role in playing, in creating the tragedy. Because I'm talking about we, I'm talking as a Brit now, okay? Though I don't look like one. That Britain was a country, when it was given the mandate to look after Palestine, decided to give away Palestine. And that's how the tragedy started. So when it couldn't happen in 1947, you know, this resolution 181 partition of Palestine into a part for Jews and part for Arabs. But then what happened in 1948? The almost 50-50 partition became 22-78. Palestine became even smaller. So from 1948 onwards, you got a map on the third side. You know, you can see that what's West Bank and Gaza was only 22%. Israel took 78%, and Palestine completely disappeared from the map of the world. And the Palestinians became refugees living in the West Bank and Gaza. And when you talk about a two-state solution, it was almost like the map, the last map on the right, even worse now. Okay? Originally, the two-state solution was giving back the 22% of Palestine to the Palestinian people to call their home. But even that did not happen. You have ongoing settlement of Palestine, the Gaza being blockaded. So it is a story that's ongoing, leading, culminating in a genocide and a proposed ethnic cleansing today. So this is 1982, when I first visited Lebanon. I was like many young doctors, wanting to do something to help people, very much like some of my young colleagues watching the bombing of Lebanon and the genocide of Gaza, wanting to use their skills to help somebody. So I resigned and I came into Lebanon, bombed to bits, blocks and blocks of buildings. These are pictures I've taken myself anyway. And an 11-floor building sucked in by what we call an implosion bomb. These are the big bombs. You're talking about 2,000 pounds, when it explodes and it consumes all the oxygen, sucking in the whole explosion. It's called an implosion versus an explosion bomb. So this building buried 200 people in it. So as a young surgeon, I have to learn humility because I can never save these people. It would take something more than a medical team to do something. So the PLO did evacuate, because if they did not evacuate, the bombing was promised to affect the whole of Lebanon. And you must not forget that the PLO was a refugee organization. The people of the PLO at the time, they were not Lebanese. They are refugees in a country called Lebanon. And their presence has brought on continuous attack on the country called Lebanon. So basically, there's no way they could escape the evacuator. So everybody thought, great, there's a ceasefire. But I learned very quickly that a ceasefire is not peace. Anyway, with the ceasefire, we were seconded, the Christian Aid team, to work with the International Red Cross. And that was me. There was one time when I was young. And I was sent to a hospital called Gaza Hospital. And Gaza meant nothing to me. Okay, I'm just a doctor growing up in the UK. But now Gaza meant so much. And I know why is it called Gaza Hospital. Because the Palestinian refugees from Gaza became refugees in Lebanon. And within the refugee camps, to remember the places they come from, they built hospitals. They call it Gaza Hospital, Haifa Hospital, Ramallah Maternity Home, and so on and so forth, so that their children growing up as refugees, by just looking at the hospital, attending the hospital, know where they are from. The Palestine Red Crescent Society ran 13 clinics and 9 hospitals, and they treated everyone free, Lebanese and Palestinians alike. All 9 hospitals were bombed, 8 of them flattened. Gaza Hospital was spared. The military actions stopped after 2 floors. This is the top floor of Gaza Hospital, bombed from the air, shelled from the mountains.
In the Times of Israel, an ad with a picture of smiling Israeli soldiers with these words asking for people to send money so soldiers can have an elaborate Passover meal. Can you believe it, with all the billions and billions of dollars Americans send to Israel and all the money the Israeli 1% owns? They're still calling out for more money to be sent so they can feed soldiers. Jews have a word in Yiddish, chutzpah, that means gall. To define it sharply, a story is told of a man who kills his mother and father and then in court asks for mercy because he's an orphan. Israeli chutzpah has no limits. Syria. Israel is seizing more of Syria and is killing Syrians in the process. This map shows what Israel has taken and plans to take. Notice what has been seized so far is already larger than the Golan that Israel seized in 1967. Charles Lister tweeted, in an emergency session amid Israel's escalation, the Israeli representative just told the UNSC that Israel has an inherent right of self-defense. But there have been 0 attacks from Syria to Israel since Assad fell, and 800 plus Israeli attacks. How does that work? Believe it or not, the Israeli army is giving tours to civilians of newly occupied parts of Syria. Haaretz writes, the tours are an initiative of the Northern Command and the 210th Division. It's billed as a unique tour to a stream where Israelis were previously banned. The invitation continued. The Rakad is on the Israeli-Syrian border and is outside the border fence, meaning clearly in Syria. Until recent months, few Israelis have been privileged to visit there and see the mighty waterfalls and beautiful pools between the canyon's vast basalt walls. The IDF has allowed a first peek at this unique tri-state border where the Yarmouk River and the Rakad stream meet. Swimming will be allowed in the pools at the visitor's own risk. I talked last week with Syrian-American activist Ramah Kudaimi. I started by asking her about chances for a joint Syrian-Palestinian struggle.
I would say history shows that this has always actually been a common struggle, even if today at times it seems that they're not so. Zionism has impacted every single person in the region. Obviously, first and foremost, the Palestinian people, considering it is the Palestinian people who have been at the forefront of fighting back against Zionism and its stealing of their lands and resources and destruction of their homeland. But Zionism has obviously impacted the entire region. Israel has occupied Syrian land since 1967, the Golan Heights. When Israel was first established, it was Arab armies from across the region who came to help defend the Palestinian people. It is actually part of a Zionist project to take Palestine outside of the greater struggle of the region, to say that, and it was why, for example, they made peace treaties with Jordan, with Egypt, in order to break apart, a regional resistance to them. And so I think it's very important that we don't forget that history, even if in the last 10, 15 years, there has been sometimes this appearance that somehow these struggles are not connected. And so, and like you were saying, at this point, now that Israel's back to its, normally scheduled programming of genocide in Gaza, now back to also continuing to attack its neighbors, whether it's Lebanon and now obviously Syria, I think it's a very important moment for all of us to think, yes, actually this regional struggle is interconnected, and the only way for anyone to be free in the region is that all these regimes fall, including the regime in Israel. The Syrian people accomplished something great 4 months ago with the fall of the Assad regime, something they fought for almost 15 years. But it's also very clear now in these last couple of weeks that as long as Israel exists the way it exists, that there is a threat to all people's struggles in the region.
And even at the worst points, when it looked like the only parts of Syria that weren't controlled by Assad was a little area in Idlib, even in Idlib you would see pictures, Palestinian flags and pictures of things that were going on there. So I wonder if we could encourage both Syrians to come to the Palestinian demonstrations with Syrian flags and with posters about what is happening, what Israeli forces are doing inside of Syria, and then the reverse.
Yeah, I mean, people under bombardment are always going to find solidarity with each other. So you're like you were saying in Idlib, even when Assad was dropping bombs on Idlib, folks would come out in support of Palestinians, particularly in Gaza, since the genocide started. And some of the first people that congratulated the people of Syria in the fall of Assad were people in Gaza. Like the amount of videos that came out of Gaza, people congratulating the people of Syria for their victory against the Assad regime was absolutely beautiful. And so I think sometimes we need to there's a lot of lessons we need to learn from people who are actually at the forefront of these struggles. And the first and foremost is this idea of solidarity. And does it not need to be more complicated than, yes, showing at each other's marches, carrying each other's flags, talking about each other's struggles, because again, they are interconnected. And anyone who understands these struggles truly understands that there's no way that there will be a free Palestine that does not impact the freedom of everyone else in the region, or a free Syria that is not going to impact the freedom of everyone else in the region. Why did a lot of regimes freak out when Assad fell 4 months ago? Is because they realized, other people are going to be inspired. And let's remember, the Syrian people were inspired to take to the streets back in March of 2011 because they saw what happened in Tunisia, because they saw what happened in Egypt, they saw what happened in Bahrain, they saw what happened in Libya, they saw what happened in Yemen. And so this is all very much interconnected, and we have to think about each win in the region is building to the ultimate win, which is freedom and justice and dignity for everyone in the region.
That's our program for today. See you next week at this time. I'm Stanley Heller for the Struggle Video News.